Good evening and welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Rod Goldhahn. I'm one of the vice presidents of the Brown County Taxpayers Association. Taxes. That's a necessary mechanism to pay for governmental shared services. As citizens, we accept the fact and we're prepared to pay our fair share. It's also our right and responsibility to know how we are taxed, why we're taxed, and that those dollars are used efficiently and effectively. That's one of the missions of our association, to educate our citizens about governmental taxation policy and encourage our active participation in the development and the execution of those policies. With the recent sunsetting of the Packer sales tax, there's been much discussion about the county continuing that 0.5% sales tax. Our organization is opposed to that. We poll the county board candidates each election cycle and ask them to sign a pledge that they will oppose that tax. And most recently, our president, Richard Perrin, spoke in opposition to that tax at a public forum of the county board. Earlier this year, you likely saw reports in the news about the United Tribe considering two new taxes, a seat tax on flights out of Austin-Straubel and a sales tax collected by businesses that sit on leased tribal land. Now, because the tribe has a closed governmental system, we don't know much about the debate that went into those decisions or the legal mechanisms behind them. So there's a lot of uncertainty. And for an organization that's focused on promoting educated citizenry, that was a problem for us. So that brings us to tonight's speaker, Elaine Willman, who will be speaking to tribal taxes and jurisdictional expansions and eroding state and citizen sovereignty. Now that's quite a mouthful. However, Ms. Willman will help us make that easier to digest. Elaine is a national expert on federal Indian policy, having researched and lived on 3 Indian reservations over 25 years across the country in Washington, Wisconsin, and Montana. She holds a master's degree in public administration and is the author of 2 books, Going to Pieces, The Dismantling of the United States of America, 2nd edition, and Slumbering Thunder, a primer for confronting the spread of federal Indian policy and tribalism overwhelming America. She's a familiar face to many of us. From 2008 to 2015, Ms. Willman was the Director of Tribal Affairs for the Village of Hobart and continues to provide consultation services for the village. She is frequently a guest on radio talk shows across the country and provides keynote presentations and workshops upon request. Just this month, Ms. Willman was part of a national talk show with Alex Newman, writer for New American Magazine, speaking to connecting the dots using indigenous people to destroy private property. Elaine currently lives on the Flathead Indian Reservation in Ronan, Montana, which I might add is one of the most beautiful areas of the country if you've never been there. Now, I understand she got some advice when she was moving from Wisconsin to Montana because the Flathead Valley where she resides is grizzly country. You've got the Mission Mountains to the south of her and other mountain ranges around there. So she was told that if you go to Montana, you need to buy a truck and you need to buy a gun. And she said, okay, I can deal with the truck, but what kind of a gun do I buy? Well, that depends. If you want to shoot the bear, you need to buy a big one. If you just want to shoot your husband in the knee so you can outrun him, then you can buy a little one that will fit in your purse. So please join me in a warm returning welcome to Elaine Willman.
Thank you. I wonder if is this on?
No.
I wonder if we can get it on.
I didn't turn it on before I started.
Oh, I'm a little technically challenged, so I'll let you.
Should be a button right here. There you go.
Is that on? Oh, that's on. Okay. Sorry, thank you very much for that wonderful invitation. I really would like to thank Brown County Taxpayers Association for inviting me here. I used to go to those monthly meetings and see some wonderful, some wonderful or familiar faces. We'll put it that way. We're not old, you know what I mean? So I've been gone 1 year and 3 months from Hobart, and I guess I have to tell you that my dad was a traveling insurance man, and we lived all over the Northwest when I was growing up. I went to 7 schools in the 2nd grade, you know what I mean? And as I grew up, we never really settled down anywhere. And then I went off to college in Washington, and then I married the kid's father, who was a career Army officer during the Vietnam years, and we kept on moving. And I don't have a hometown per se. And I don't have even a home state, you know. I've just lived in a lot of places. The longest I've lived anywhere was on the Yakima Reservation, 16 years. My friend Jackie's here, so good to have her with me tonight. But I lived here in Hobart 8 years. And when I got off the plane Monday night and jumped into my friend's car, it was like I never left. And it's like, it's so good to be back, and it feels like hometown. And that's one of the things that drives me, because one of the things that most impressed me about the folks in Brown County were the wonderful large farm families, and when I'd ask somebody, have you lived here long? Oh, all my life, and I remember being in Hobart once, and I said, were you born here? And when I say here, I think Wisconsin, and they say, oh no, I was born in De Pere. You know what I mean? Just a little territorial, you know what I mean? But what is coming to mind is one of my favoriteest folks that I met is the wonderful Joan Reedon here. And Joan has 11 children and 40 grandchildren and 20 great-grandchildren. 25 great-grandchildren. And the Reedon family, they were big dairy farmers in Hobart, and they were part of the stability of the village of Hobart. And Joan was also an activist before most of us were, and has contributed to the stability of that municipality and Brown County in a big way. So it was just a joy when her son and his wife brought her up this evening. So I want to make a few disclaimers. I'm here to talk about taxes and federal Indian policy and how those two connect. But for those of you who've never heard me before, I need you to know that I'm a very strong Cherokee ancestry, and my husband is Shoshone, a descendant of Sacagawea, and I'm here to talk about decisions, federal Indian policy or decisions. I'm not here, I am completely supportive of Native American people. And one of the organizations, national organizations I chaired, started out to assist tribal families and members who have no civil rights, who have no constitutional rights, and they have no parental rights as enrolled tribal members. And they are as big a victims in this whole shenanigan called federal Indian policy. They suffer like we do because all those big bazillions don't get down to upgrade their life on reservations at all. So I just want to make it clear that I'm not talking about culture or American Indian history, although it's a big part of it. I'm talking about decisions. And the other little thing is that who makes those decisions? Most of us think, darn tribe, that darn tribe. And I was one of them for a long, long time. And then, the light bulb comes on. The tribal government, not one of the 567 tribal governments, has the authority to make a decision over anything except their own people and their own land. Tribal governments do not make federal Indian policy. Our senators, our congressmen, our governors, our county commissioners, America's elected officials have created federal Indian policy, and the courts. And so what I do is I keep the focus on the folks doing this to everybody, including the tribal members. And that has been an escalating process for many years, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Is there anybody here who's never heard me talk on federal Indian policy before? Anybody who'd rather not hear me talk about it? Okay. I want to do a little background because these are facts. They're news to some people, no news to others, and maybe even disturbing news to some, but I'm just going to tell what I know about the Brown County area before we get into the tax discussion. And that is that this beautiful big Brown County was carved out of the Michigan Territory. It was huge, long before we had the state of Wisconsin. Brown County is the oldest governing jurisdiction in this region. It's older than the state of Wisconsin. In 1848, we got the state of Wisconsin. In, I don't quite remember, 1908, we got the town of Hobart. 1910, we got the town of Oneida. 1937 was the birth of the Oneida Tribe of Indians Governing Authority. Not a day sooner. 1937. They were the youngest, they are the youngest governing authority in this area. But you just ask them, and they're time immemorial, boy, they're, they are the youngest. It chartered, incorporated governing system in our area. Brown County is the oldest, state of Wisconsin. Their treaty of 1838 that they're always talking about, it is a unique treaty. It's unlike any other treaties in the country. And it is not a treaty between sovereigns. Most treaties are. But it was a treaty. In 1830, the United States was getting well populated in 13 colonies and filled out, and Congress, for whatever reason, said, well, we need the Indian Removal Act. We want to move all Indians west of the Mississippi. And that was the Trail of Tears. I'm not saying that was a right or wrong decision. It certainly was painful for many people. So they moved all the Indians west of the Mississippi, including the New York Oneidas, who were only a state-recognized tribe and had a state reservation because the 13 colonies had no federal, still known, any federal land to speak of in the 13 colonies. So the Treaty of 1838 is not between, and if you read it, it doesn't even say so, it's not a treaty between the United States and the Oneida Tribe of Indians of Wisconsin. It's a treaty between the first Christian, individual members of the first Christian and Orchard parties, small bands of the former New York Oneidas. And the treaty was specific to do one thing. It carved out 65,400 acres to be divided up into exactly 654 100-acre parcels. It was never intended to be communal land for a tribal government to function on. That treaty, but you know how we revise history and tell different tales and things, but that's what that treaty was. And it was even that land that is the former Oneida Indian Reservation today, they claim the boundaries, was ceded. That treaty was 1838. 10 years later, when we got the state of Wisconsin, all that land of the former reservation was ceded to the state of Wisconsin. So it had state jurisdiction on it from the time of statehood. And a few of those New York Indians that were out here got their 100 acres. Most didn't. So by the time the Dawes Act came along and they actually got their acreage, the whole reservation was allotted out. But my point is, this is the youngest tribe, this is the youngest governing system, and the only tax advantage the tribe should have is a tax-exempt status on their trust land. There's even questionable law and history regarding how they became federally recognized in 1937. Little shenanigans. For example, when Wisconsin was a state, they chartered 2 towns. We had state jurisdiction. They bring in the town of Hobart, town of Oneida. First elected officials were Indians. And then in 1934, when this Indian Reorganization Act came out, they're thinking, oh, we could have our own government back. But prior to that, those Indian elected officials of Oneida and Hobart had gone down begging for roads. That's why they needed to be a town, to tax themselves and build roads. And they had no land and they had no roads. When they shifted, when the Indian Reorganization Act came on in 1934, these tax-paying Wisconsin citizens that lived on this former reservation and were subject to all Wisconsin laws, everything, and Hobart has boxloads of letters from BIA officials saying, you're a Wisconsin citizen now. You can't hunt and fish just everywhere you want. You're a Wisconsin citizen. Oh, you're a Wisconsin citizen, you can drink. We have all kinds of documentation that the citizens on the reservation during that period of time, the former reservation, were Wisconsin citizens. Then this act comes along, and they go down, these former New York Indians, with land who were then elected officials in the towns, they go down to Madison, and they take out non-profit corporation papers from the state of Wisconsin to form a group. so they can apply for federal recognition. So, can you imagine Wisconsin citizens going down to Madison, forming a nonprofit corporation, calling themselves the Oneida Tribe of Indians of Wisconsin, and then applying to the Bureau of Indian Affairs to be a federally recognized tribe? Well, let's imagine the Brown County Taxpayers Association, a nonprofit corporation, saying, we want to be an Indian tribe too. You know what I'm saying? It was completely illegal. But in those days, it worked. And that's how they became federally chartered, even when it was too late. They had a year after 1934. They weren't chartered until 1937. That's why they're the youngest government. But let me move on. The Indian reorganization at that 1934 is a pivotal year for this area, because when they became in 37 a tribe, they were allowed to acquire land and remove it from the state's tax base. That act only allowed tax exemption. It didn't really cover jurisdiction. But as things get bent and areas get gray, now the mentality across the country of Indian trust land is, well, that's King's X, that's only for their jurisdiction, state and county, and everybody else stay off. Well, that's not true either. The purpose of IRA was to give them a tax exemption only on the land, and Wisconsin state jurisdiction is still there. I bring this up because it matters when it comes to challenging additional tribal sales tax, or the newest fun thing, seat tax at the airport. You know, we're talking about a questionably recognized tribe on a former reservation that never had a treaty for that government, this government. It was for two little New York bands. So legally, taxpayers in Brown County, and legally, if the legal eagles around the county and the various cities pay attention to just the historical record, then you will see that the municipalities and the counties are in a position of strength when it comes to any unnecessary sales tax because of the jurisdictional status. That's a very important part of it. Something happened around 1988, and it had a significant effect on Wisconsin. And Joan was a part of that process. But in 1988, the Congress, again, our senators, congressmen, governors, then you had Governor Navajo Jim Doyle, you know, the folks that we elect to serve us were passing these major congressional acts really promoting and pushing out tribal governance, even tribal governance over non-members, even where their constitutions give them only jurisdiction over their own people in their own place. So, but a money wheel formed up right after 1988. And the money wheel was the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, where these Class 3, where tribal governments could have these big Class 3 tax-exempt casinos. And most tribes didn't reach into their pocket to build them. The American gaming industry jumped right on board and said, hey, we'll get you federally recognized, we'll build your casino, we'll train your staff, we'll take a little management contract for 7 years, and you're up and running. So it's not just the tribal gambling. The whole American gaming industry jumped into this because prior to that, you had to go to Vegas, Atlantic City, Tahoe. It was destination gambling. But the Indian Gaming Act opened up the country for what I call McDonald's for the mob, Class 3 gaming casinos across the country. You know, it really was. All tax exempt. Now, when these plugged down into a community, mind you, all of the tribal government's basic life needs, housing, health, education, law enforcement, courts, cultural resources, all the basic life needs are annually funded by you and me, the American taxpayers. We're doing that every year, times 567 tribes. So this big gaming revenue is free money. And it was intended to upgrade the quality of life for the tribal families, but it does not. I mean, there's some rare exceptions, but Largely it does not. The poverty levels just worsen. So this free money is used for what I call the 4 L's. It has purchased lobbyists. Tribal lobbyists swarm the halls of Madison, of D.C., of all your capitals. It has purchased lobbyists. It has purchased legislators at every level: Senate, Congress, governors, state legislators, county commissioners, city council people, up and down our political food chain, because somehow when the gaming money came on, Congress saw the money wheel. They can throw this opportunity tax exempt out to these tribes, and then in the year 2000, just before the Bush-Gore election, the Federal Election Commission, a little 3-member appointed commission in D.C., determined that tribal governments were governments for purposes of receiving subsidies and governing themselves, but they were persons for purpose of participating in America's elections. So tribal governments from 2000 to now may cut checks from their general treasury, from their casino revenue. They may write checks directly into both political parties, and they do in mega millions, or they can write a check to a candidate or an incumbent unabashed. Now, no other American government can participate financially in our elections, but 567 tribal governments do. And so then you get this money wheel, where the money rolls out to the tribes, but they're wheeling it back to the political system. And with that money, they get power. So where your congressmen and senators are wandering the halls in D.C., and they're running into dozens daily of lobbyists that go in there saying, my people, or maybe they'll go in and say, you want to stay in office? Yeah, you do it our way. We have literally coin-operated elected officials now from a system that has overwhelmed both our election system, and it has shifted the allegiance of the people we put in office. Now, I've got some horror stories in Montana, but what I mean by that is we have elected officials across the country, and they're running for office and saying, by God, I'm born and raised in Arizona, I'm going to take care of Arizona, I love Arizona, vote for me. And they're in D.C. for maybe a month, and all of a sudden they're signing on to bills for tribal governments, pueblos, whatever it is out there. And every one of those bills has a direct consequence. It's a big benefit to a tribal government, but it's a direct harm and a burden that has to be picked up by the rest of us taxpayers. And these people that were elected are senators. I'm going to carve out Senator Ron Johnson as an exception, maybe Congressman Duffy. And actually, Wisconsin's in much better shape than most of the other senators and congressmen across the country. But these folks have now got a mindset like tribal sovereignty and the needs of these tribes is superior to the states they took an oath to serve. Now, when you figure of these 567 tribes, only about 1 million are enrolled members of these various tribes. A little over 1 million people in America are actually enrolled tribal members. 3 out of 4 don't even live on reservations anymore. So here we have 324 million people across the country, and we have 567 tribes representing 1 million. And all of a sudden, huge things are going to these tribes across the country, not because they're demanding it, or they have the power to do it. It's our senators and our congressmen and our governors. They're doing it. It took me a long time to snap to that, but that's what it is. The financial and political and the politically correct, you say no to a tribe, you're a racist. You speak unkindly of a decision, well, you're a racist. And nobody wants to be called a racist. So the political and financial pressure is so huge on the people we elect. It's just easier for them to cave. And we're not holding them accountable because most of us don't know what's going on. I sure didn't until I started getting into this. So that's a very significant piece of why the taxpayer is increasingly picking up the slack of money coming out of the community's disposable income and into tax-exempt tribal hotels, tax-exempt casinos, tax-exempt businesses. That loss of disposable income has to be made up by somebody, and it's not them, it's the rest of us. And that's a really serious problem. I wanted to talk about across the country. I'd really love to go on and on about the nightmare that we're dealing with out west. I moved there for a reason. But what's happening, and if I can step up to maybe a 20,000 foot level, what's happening across this country today, and it really started, and this is not just Democrats or Republicans, this is both parties. And this kicked off pretty good with the Clinton administration, and has progressed exponentially through the Bushes, and under the present administration is napalm. And what is happening, you may have seen it in 2008 when we were in recession. It was all blame, our president came in and said, oh, we're in recession, I'm going to save you from recession. We had a housing issue that was affected. The nation's housing suffered. The health industry took a whole new turn and is failing. Therefore, while the auto industry was catching, what's going on today in 2015 and 2016 is there is a concerted effort to go after water, all water, state waters in the western states, energy. The president has decided that the nation's power and energy grid is good economic development for tribal governments. And they have no duty to you and me, nor any experience in the industry. And billions are rolling out now to tribal governments to acquire big hydropower dams, big electrical facilities. It's a disruption of our national power grid, where Congress passed the Indian Energy Policy Act in 2010. Our senators and congressmen agreed with the president that our nation's power grid was really good economic development for tribal governments. That is freaking insane. I mean, we have a national security problem. Here's why. Over 100 years ago, when the West was being settled, and they were saying, go west, young man, states are being given their statehood, the Secretary of Interior then required that all new western dams, energy systems that were put into the western states be located on or near Indian reservation. Well, in 1904, that was a good idea. Federal government could kind of keep a strong foot on the energy out in the western states, the new western state. Well, then in 2012, our Congress, this, what I thought was a do-nothing Congress, has done absolutely everything the present administration has asked, passed a benign thing called the Hearth Act, H-E-A-R-T-H, Hearth Act. And that's housing, education, and agriculture. I'm not sure but it was a big money appropriation bill for all the tribal governments. And in the middle of it, the present administration decided that American private sector businesses are not really cooperating on reservations, and the economic development isn't going very well. Well, they have tribal sovereign immunity. You're a private corporation, you execute a contract with a tribe. If they can pay or maybe not pay, if they don't pay, you're just out of luck. You can't say they have sovereign immunity. So the American private sector corporation has had their fingers burned enough where they're not rushing onto reservations. So the president's answer to that is, well, by golly, these big wealthy Middle Eastern countries would be good economic development for our Indian reservations. So in the middle of the Hearth Act is the ability for a tribal government to long-term lease its federal trust land, where no state or county or localizer are looking, to Middle Eastern corporations or companies for economic development on that reservation. Well, remember, all of our hydropower dams and energy systems are also right there. And that's a very risky combination in this country. So my feeling, and I'm just expressing my opinion, is my feeling is that we already have 190 sanctuary cities, and now we have 346 or 340 Indian reservations across the country, any one of whom can say, God, I'd love some of that money from Turkey or Saudi Arabia, and there we go. And not only that, they don't have to have BIA approval or any BIA oversight. They can just do it. Our Congress, our senators and congressmen let that happen. Now, I'm not sure what the percentage is in Wisconsin. I used to. I think it's around 5 or 6% of our state's population is Native American. But a good 95% is all the rest of us. But if you look at the money coming out of the federal government to those 11 tribes in Wisconsin, and even Wisconsin state government coming out, because that gaming compact money that comes into the state gets rolled right back out for tribal tourist-related activities to the tribes. So there's a tremendous volume of income that is taking away the sales and property tax base from this state inordinately based on a very small population. And the burden just keeps shifting upward for the taxes on everybody else. So now we're going to try two new ones. Well, I talked to Tom Miller. I called him from Montana when I heard about that seat taxer. I just thought, how insane is that? And Tom said, don't worry about anything. He said, the FAA will never allow that. He said, just don't worry about it. That's just... And I heard from a good tribal... I have many, many good Oneida tribal friends, by the way. Just spent 4 days in one of their homes. What I've heard from the Oneida folks is that one or two kind of loose cannons thought, well, that's a swell idea. And they put in with some kind of little formal petition which must be processed through their tribal courts or their tribal business committee system. And so it will kind of gurgle up. But I'm also told that one's going nowhere. And then Tom Miller says the same thing. The FAA will never let that happen. So I'm not worried so much at that one, other than everything's gone lawless these days. So it doesn't hurt to keep an eye on it anyway. The other one is a tribal sales tax that I hear is being bandied about. And so I started our Hobart Legal Counsel, and myself and my daughter started researching, because you very infrequently hear about a tribal sales tax. It's not all that common on most reservations. But we did find in Oneida Nation, New York, the Oneida Nation, New York, which are very closely affiliated with the Wisconsins, they do have an Oneida Nation of New York sales tax and ordinance, a tribal ordinance that authorizes them to do sales tax. That sales tax, if a tribe really wants to do that, it is legitimate. If you're in a tribal casino gift shop, or you're in a tribally operated business, they have every right to impose a tribal sales tax. But where it stops, or should, is to impose this tribal sales tax in a business that is not owned by a tribal entity or person. A non-tribal business should not have to collect a tribal sales tax. And, so there would be some really serious legal challenge to look at if the Oneidas want to charge a tribal sales tax on any of their entities or any of their products. That's their business, and buyers can buy or not. But if they move to a point where they want, let's say some of the, like Walmart, Festival Foods, and some of those folks on the Indian lease land, those are not tribal businesses. And if there's an attempt to assess a sales tax on that, I think there's a really legitimate, serious legal challenge that can be made. But I think people will vote with their feet. I used to do all my shopping at Festival Foods, Walmart, and places like that up on Mason. But if I were living here still, and they're going to add a tribal sales tax to everything else, I'll go elsewhere. So would most folks. And that's going to be a downside to the municipality, to the private business, and that's going to erase the benefit. These big box stores on trust land got really good deals on the land, annual lease land. They got the land for a song, so they didn't have to buy the land. They could just build the buildings and open up a shop on tribal lease land. But if all of a sudden they're on this low-rate lease land, and they've got a good thing going, and the tribe says, we want you to add a tribal sales tax here. Well, that sort of counterbalances any benefit they had from a low lease. So, it's in my view, it's a felony stupid move for the tribe to even think about. But there are those where enough is never enough. They just want more. And there are those thinkers. They're not the majority of the tribal members, but they're some of the radical leaders that just keep thinking, let's get more. And most recently, I just about fell apart. I heard that the Oneida tribe sued Hobart over $100 special event permit. And I mean, they sued them in federal court. They spent thousands of dollars going into federal court for a temporary restraining order, permanent injunction. By golly, they weren't going to get a $100 permit from Hobart. Now, they'll do all kinds of deals with Green Bay, Oshwaukon, state of Wisconsin. But, that doesn't threaten their sovereign immunity. But by golly, if they have to get a $100 permit for Hobart, that's going to threaten their sovereign immunity. So they take this frivolous case into Judge Griesbach, who has the light of reason, and he denied them a temporary restraining order. But the permanent injunction, they don't ever want to have to get a permit from Hobart. That piece will go forward, and we're kind of grateful for that. I mean, literally. Because if Hobart were to have a big issue and sue the tribal government, it's very difficult. They have tribal sovereign immunity, very difficult to sue. But if they're foolish enough to sue you, they lose their sovereign immunity. Then you're sort of on an equal playing field. So they've just kind of thrown us in the perfect briar patch. And we're just kind of going to look at that. I can't speak for the village, but those are the kinds of things we're looking at. I want to talk about one of the most egregious things happening now, and this will affect Wisconsin. Some of you are much more familiar with the forests in this state than I am. I usually was stuck in the building at Hobart. I didn't get to travel the state, but I know Wisconsin has some marvelous and multiple big national forests. You also have 11 tribes. The most recent thing, and it has been insidious, and they have played hide the ball among different bills, is that in the Senate and in the House, we discovered 2 or 3 Senate bills, 2 or 3 House bills regarding a Tribal Forestry Management Act. Tribal Forestry Management Act, wherein any tribal government with a reservation within 100 miles of a forest that has some cultural affiliation with that forest, or maybe it was their ancestral lands, may manage that national forest within 100 miles of any Indian reservation. And if it's particularly, the more so if it was their former ancestral lands. Well, the whole North American continent was the Indians' ancestral lands. So just think about Wisconsin itself, because you folks live in that state. And think about the location of the 11 reservations in this state. And the opportunity to manage the national forest. A couple of things happen, more so in other states here than Wisconsin, but as this affects the other states where I live in the big high country, then the tribal government has the snowpack and the headwaters and all those waters they didn't already have from the rivers, and they confiscate all the waters of that state if they manage the forest. And the second thing that happens is they determine who can use the forest. Can you hunt there? Can you walk there? Can you go camping there? Can your children with wonderful college educations work for the Forest Service if it's tribal hiring preference? These are America's national forests. This is going to deeply affect what's left of our timber industry, deeply affect the transition of America's waters, and deeply affect America's ability to recreate in our forests. And this has now been tucked into, it was 2 separate bills. It was House Bill 2647 in the House, merged with Senate Bill 3085, 2 freestanding bills that were partnered up to be voted on as the Tribal Forestry Management Act. Well, a whole bunch of us across the country started ringing phones and screaming and emailing and doing press releases, and so those bills sort of disappeared. And then we found them in the middle of a 792-page energy bill sponsored by Senator Murkowski in Alaska. These people we elected to serve all America have taken that Forestry Management Act tribal forests and sneaked it into this big must-pass energy appropriation bill. And so we're alerting everybody we can. I want to mention that here because all of this stuff eventually transfers jurisdiction, authority, income, revenue to a small tribal government. It also captures a national forest and puts them as Charles in charge. And maybe you can or maybe you can't enjoy America's national forest. That is how far afield wonderful people that we elected to serve have gone with this stuff because of the big money wheel. This huge Indian gaming and the huge ability to control political funding, who gets in, who's out, who does their bidding, who do they remove. It's even worse where I live in Montana, because in Montana, the ACLU partnered up with the Crow tribe, and the Crow tribe was saying, "Oh, these state polling precincts are just too far from our reservation for our people to vote, and it's just not fair." And the court agreed, and so the state has sprinkled state polling precincts around 7 Indian reservations in Montana, and the tribe positioned those polling precincts on federal trust land, where the state of Montana, the Secretary of State has zero enforcement authority. So now the Native Americans are given a feast and a bus and money, and they go to these polling precincts on federal trust land where non-tribal members are kicked out of the polling precincts. State of Montana, the Secretary of State has no enforcement, and they just play with those ballot boxes and bring them in land. And that's exactly how in 2006 Senator John Tester was elected to the Senate, and he was the 51st Democrat, and it turned the Senate. And that system is still in place in Montana. Those who are benefiting from the system, those elected officials who accept those contributions and who are benefiting from the system, are going to be the last ones to end it. So it's a real conundrum for us taxpayers. It really is. What we need to be doing is straight talking with the people we elect before we elect them and after. And we need to say, do you serve all of the citizens in your state? Have you taken an oath of office to Wisconsin or to the tribe in your district? Because it's really an either or on some of this stuff. Because if the allegiance has shifted to a tribal government, the remaining constituents in that elected official's district are going to pay. And I would challenge the BCTA and all of the folks around here to just babysit. You're in better shape with your congressman here than we are in most of the other states. But nonetheless, we are losing. And I will close it, and then I want to open it up to questions. I love Q&A. We're a young country. We're the grand prize on the globe. We're 227 years old. We're about freedom and the pursuit of happiness and the Constitution, a republic form of government, and everybody wants a piece of us. The globalists, the internationalists, the Agenda 21 folks, the tribal system, the radicals of the tribal system says we were here first, and they want their land back. Well, they're not just revising history. In the western states, it's getting reversed. So we have this situation in the United States right now today, which makes this upcoming election so terribly critical, where the principles and policies of the Agenda 21 stuff, which I used to think was tin hat, I know it's not now, all of that language has been languaged in through the Bureau of Indian Affairs and federal Indian policy regulations they set out, consistent with Agenda 21. The tribes are extremely busy trying to become separate sovereign nations with the United Nations. And President Obama is more than interested and happy to help them become, he signed that United Nations Indigenous thing. It means nothing without Senate approval. But nonetheless, there is this combination of strange bedfellows with similar but harmonious goals. If any of you just Google Agenda 2030 or you look on some of those websites, you'll see a map of the North American continent. That map no longer, by 2030, does not show any of the 50 states of the United States. It shows 10 regions. And this movement to give water and energy to tribal governments and transfer state-owned waters and state resources tribal government is a part of diminishing state authority in the 10th Amendment and state protections of citizens' property owners. So, and then integrating this stuff into other federal regulations for tribes is spreading this. That's why I said the spread of tribalism. I wrote the Going to Pieces book in 2004, and the folks that we were interviewing, tribal and otherwise, were worried about these things in 2004. It is now 2016, and the Going to Pieces book has been put in a second edition with an index because it was prophetic. Everything the folks were really worried about is right here and pushing hard. And I'll give you a little example. Currently, I live on the Flathead Indian Reservation. My lights and power for the whole reservation is controlled by the Bureau of Indian Affairs as managed by the little tribe. That's to my light switch and computer, any electricity for the towns, 11 towns, hospitals. The little tribal government runs the power on the whole reservation. Recently, this Governor Bullock and Attorney General Fox in Montana and the majority of the state legislature thought it was a swell thing to give this little tribe all of the state's waters in 11 counties, the 11 counties that border Idaho. 20% of the state's waters are now being transferred by the state to this little tribe in 11 counties. And the state's throwing in an extra $55 million state taxpayer dollars to help. And so, and the federal government has helped the tribe obtain a major, what they call a Black Start hydropower dam in Polson, Montana, which is on the reservation. So, the dam provides the water for the irrigation of the farmers, and the tribe owns the dam and owns the water and decides who gets what in terms of water. The state has completely walked away from 35,000 non-tribal citizens that live there. Not only just abandoned, but we're in an adversarial. They're in an adversarial. The folks that live on the Flathead Reservation, and imagine this being the case on this former Oneida, have no government whatsoever to support them or help them. And their little town councils and county commissions are so tremendously uninformed and so tremendously bullied and afraid of the tribe that they literally grovel for any little dime, and they're no help to their property owners. A couple of the counties are facing bankruptcy. That's how bad it is. It's as though tribal sovereignty really is superior. But here's the deal, and I'll close on this. In our U.S. Constitution, there are 3 sovereignties, and they're in order. And the first one is yours and mine. My citizen, our popular sovereignty. That's the first one in the Constitution. And the second one is the states. You remember it was the 13 states that created the federal government. States. And the third sovereignty is the federal government's. To be a balance between federal government and states. Well, that's like this now. But those are the 3 sovereignties. There is no sovereignty, tribal sovereignty, contemplated in the Constitution, never was. The tribal sovereignty, that's why we call them federally recognized. They never used that term, but they are allowed to exist because Congress lets them. They are federally recognized. And they have an extension of the federal sovereignty, which is their quasi-dependent sovereignty. But if you listen to them, oh my God, they've been sovereign since the planets. And you hear the stuff that the Constitution is plain and simple, and it never, ever, ever contemplated tribal governments, tribal sovereignty, tribal jurisdiction over state lands or people. Nothing. And very recently, and the good news this is such a Debbie Downer, isn't it? But the good news is that our Supreme Court since 2000 has been reining this in with excellent court rulings that protect state sovereignty, protect citizen sovereignty, rein in federal overreaching, rein in tribal government overreaching. And we have a dozen or more really powerful tools now that the Supreme Court has come down with because they've seen this coming on. They're doing everything they can to stop it. Even the most liberal justices like Sotomayor and Elaine D, they're coming down with constitutional rulings because of the severity of the executive branch and tribal government overreaching. The problem is, the Supreme Court doesn't have an enforcement entity. So if these states or citizens or counties don't pick up these tools and push back, they still roll over. And that's why I'm so proud of Hobart. Hobart, among 1,061 municipalities, Hobart is the first one where all 5 elected officials said, that's enough. We're going to protect, we took an oath, we're going to protect our municipal authority, we're going to protect our citizens, property owners, we're going to protect our property tax base, and we don't care what anybody else thinks. Of course, you know the horrible blows and bad ink Hobart took for many years. They are the model. I've got a chapter in the Slumbering Thunder book, the Hobart. We just now have some local area municipalities starting to smell the coffee, and there's a couple out in Washington State that are starting to smell the coffee. But it's really up to our local and county and state and federal elected officials, because they're the ones that made this happen. And they're the only ones that can make it go away. It has nothing to do except the financial and political pressure of the tribe. These are not tribal government decisions. It's people we put into office. And they're doing that to us. So let me just take a breather there, and I hope there's some questions, and I hope I haven't upset you folks too much. Ooh. Anybody got a question? Oh, and please feel free to disagree with me and say that's not true. Or, I mean, I love a good debate, so whatever you kind of want. Yeah.
What right does the Oneidas have to get a billing fee on airlines on county-owned land?
None. I mean, absolutely none. But they will try. And, you know, they've got all the money in the world to go through legal maneuvers and whatnot. But there's none. It is county-owned. It's not tribal land. It's county-owned, public land. And as Tom Miller, the director out of the airport, has told me, FAA says, no way. No way, that's not going to happen. But they'll try, because they'll push. They've got the money and the resources to push. And if they find some liberal judge that says, oh, okay, then, you know, you're off to the races, thousands of dollars at the Supreme Court. So they will always try.
Wouldn't they have to start with the federal court in Green Bay?
They should, yeah.
Good.
But it may be, you know, I would imagine that Judge Griesbach's getting a little bored with some of these frivolous lawsuits that are coming in. And he's a man of reason. He's a wonderful judge. We're all fortunate to have him in the area. Anybody else? Yes.
Yeah, can you describe the agreements that are made for the Indian casinos, both here with the Oneida and across the country with other Indians, as far as the resource, not the resources, but the payback or income or what they share with their revenue? And
that compact development between a tribal government and a state government is all under the regulations of the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act of 1988, and it spells out, I think it's in section 2017, it spells out the steps the tribe must go through to be eligible to have a Class 3 gaming facility, beginning with it has to be on federal land, has to be placed eligible for gaming in federal trust. And then there's a process that the state, a collaborative process between the state, Department of Administration or whoever it is, the state, that works out, and they negotiate a compact wherein a percentage of the annual revenue, tax-exempt revenue, that comes from annual tribal gaming is given to the state to kind of offset the tax loss, supposedly. In the IGRA, in the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, that revenue that's coming to the state was initially intended and originally intended to be sent back to the host community of the Class 3 casino. So you have 5 Class 3 casinos in Green Bay and Ashwaubenon. Hobart doesn't have a Class 3 exempt casino. It's the one by the airport is in Ashwaubenon. But if they were following IGWA the way it was intended, that annual money contributed out of the state through a gaming compact would be pushed back to the village of Ashwaubenon or city of Green Bay, whatever municipality was the host, and lost the disposable income in the area. That was the intent of IGRA. That's never really turned out that way. Now that money is going to tribal-related tourism. It's not coming back to those communities. And that's another good question somebody ought to talk about. Another piece, and one of the reasons it doesn't come back, is again Governor Jim Doyle. State governments have no duty, no financial obligation, no federal trust, no state duty whatsoever to tribal governments. But they can self-impose one. And Doyle did that with Act 39. He just did that with Act 39 under his administration, and that set up an Indian office in every state agency. And that set up a Tribal Affairs Committee, and this state placed Santa Claus to the 11 tribes here, when it has no legal duty except what it has self-imposed. And no governor has been willing to rescind that. And, you know, we were close to him, and we mentioned it to Governor Walker, but in the beginning, Governor Walker was so burdened with elections, recalls, re-elections, that, you know, we knew that there wouldn't be anything to do. But people ought to take a very serious look at Act 39, because that has authorized state funds. That's double dipping. That's the three scoop ice cream. That's federal money annually to tribes, state money annually to tribes, gaming money. You know? Did somebody have a hand up out there? I can't see that far, so you just have to speak up.
How many contracts have you negotiated, or have you done any agreements with the state and tribes? Have you been involved personally with them?
I've read and researched a few.
I didn't ask you that.
I know. I have not heard, no.
Okay.
No, as a public employee of the village of Hobart or the city of Tompanish, those were not happening in those municipalities, so none. Okay. Anybody else? You can let me off that easy? Yes, oh, you just have to speak up.
All right. I've heard talk for quite a while about the actual existence of the tribe and it's a legal entity. And does that still have to go to the Senate, or what federal body is going to make it? Based on, I think, the years that they were supposed to have filed as a tribe versus when the government imposed a period of time. Am I stating that correctly?
I'm not sure I understand that
The
question,
IRA
Rich.
Act.
Pardon?
1934, the IRA.
Yeah.
And
They received their
37.
federal charter,
That's
I think it
right.
was May 1, 1937, if I recall. And that federal charter authorized their governance and jurisdiction over their tribal trust lands and their people, and they were a formal government
Okay.
as of 1937. Now, the reason I mention the Treaty of 1838, and this is true for many reservations across the country, is in those treaties, the United States owned the land. And they executed treaties. They were really originally for two parties. They were really for tribal people, and they were for settlers. They were settling the West. And they were saying, tribes, we don't want you fighting with each other anymore, and tribes and settlers, we don't want you fighting with the tribes anymore, and don't be fighting with you. So in those treaties, the United States promised protection to the Indians to live quietly, peacefully, communally within a bounded reservation. But those tribes did not own the land. The United States did. Those tribes did not have governing authority over the land. The Bureau of Indian Affairs did. They could live communally with any governing system informally they wanted. But it was the Bureau of Indian Affairs that had the governing authority over those treaties. And likewise, this Treaty of 1838, it was the Bureau of Indian Affairs that was ordering the 100 acres each to 654 folks. So when I say May 1, 1937, the Oneida Tribe of Indians was legally, or chartered, federally chartered, as a governing instrument, having jurisdiction. That was their first year of actual jurisdiction that wasn't just beneficial use and occupancy provided by the federal government. So, yes.
Just one more question. So a lot of the information that you have on tribes and their treaties and all this, you got that from reading. So it's your interpretation of what is right.
Well, I also got that from working with legal counsels across the country and being
I'm
directly involved in many.
I'm just saying that.
Yeah.
My opinion and your opinion and reading one type
Yeah.
of a thing we have two different opinions.
We do.
So it's your opinion.
We do. And this is truly only my opinion. I'm not speaking for any other entity or any other person. So thanks for pointing that out. I see somebody back there.
Yeah, I guess I'd just like to kind of dispute some of the facts that you have spoken tonight, specifically that maybe your claims that a former reservation and that the tribe was Oneida has been only formulated since 1937. I don't think any of that is true. I think that's all like falsification and just your point of view. There's been several treaties with the New York Indians, which specifically name Oneida Nation. There's the Canandaigua Treaty of
1794, yeah.
which also
Yeah.
states Oneida specifically in there, offering peace and friendship for helping the American government in the Revolutionary War.
Yes.
So there is a long history here, and I think it's very misleading for you to state that the government has only been here since 1937. It's just the government that you recognize since 1937. We had chiefs. We had the chief system here up until then.
Yes.
And then our people voted to go to a different form of government that is the IRA government that's
Yes.
in place now. So
Yes.
we are actually probably one of the longest standing governments in the state of Wisconsin, along with the other tribes. So I think that's misleading for you to make statements like that.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, because it's true. Even on the Oneida Tribe's letterhead, the Oneida Nation, the Oneida people in New York fought along with George Washington, and they have always, in the Treaty of Canandaigua of 1794, promised peace and friendship. However, by 1830, when the 654 First Christian and Orchard folks came out, the Oneida Nation's reservation had been disestablished by the state of New York, and the members coming out here were going to be citizens of the state. Wait, let me finish. But here's my point. Ancestry and familiarity and ancestry is not governance, and it's not jurisdiction. It is ancestry. And maybe it's promises, and but it's not jurisdiction. Now, one of the things that's happening right now is there's a big federal and international movement, as I know you folks are aware, to put jurisdictional legs under Aboriginal ground. To put jurisdictional governing authority under places the ancestors walked. And to put governing authority since time immemorial. That's happening now with big push from the United Nations, big push from the White House, big push from a number of our senators and congressmen. That's happening now. But I would ask you, we have a whole North American continent that's Aboriginal. A whole North American continent of which ancestors roamed. We also have the United States in 1789, which is a government tool. So my opinion, and it's supported by substantial research and much in the way of legal counsel across the country, my opinion is that anything that is pre-constitutional or extra-constitutional is unconstitutional. And this is where things have blown out of proportion. This is where we disagree. Were we to follow the dreams and desires of the indigenous people of Canada and North America and all across here, were we to follow and say, oh, okay, you can have jurisdiction over all your ancestral lands and all your Aboriginal lands, we'd have to find some ships for 324 million American citizens. And it's just not feasible. And people like you and me need to sit down and find solutions. And I have welcomed these kinds of debates and talks. I have no problem with finding middle ground, happy medium, live and let live. But I will always oppose tribalism and tribal government overreaching the constitutional and civil rights of the other folks in the country, and spreading across and taking out state authority and ultimately taking out the United States authority. That's something I will always vigorously oppose. Yes.
So I guess the other side of that, then, if you're talking about the Constitution.
Pardon?
The other side of that, if you're talking about the Constitution, then as well, that right in the Constitution, that treaties are the supreme law of the land, and that's what were the agreements that were made between the United States government and the indigenous nations of this continent originally were those, and a lot of them were, yes, to establish essentially the sale of our indigenous land to the United States government, not the other way around. Often the reservations that were established were our indigenous land. And yes, Oneida isn't here from Wisconsin originally. We actually purchased this land from the Menominee and the Ho-Chunk, which was originally makes that indigenous land and not land held by the United States federal government.
Well, that's an interesting look at it. But thank you for asking or for commenting on the treaty clause. No, thank you for commenting on the treaty clause in the Constitution, because it's true. There's a phrase that says treaties are the supreme law of the land. That's 1/3 of the sentence in the supremacy clause. The full sentence is, and it's in priority order, this Constitution first, the laws of Congress second, and treaties third are the supreme law of the land. And congressional acts supersede treaties. But what we hear is the last third that, oh, treaties are the supreme law of the land. State the whole sentence. It says, this Constitution, the laws of Congress, and treaties are the supreme law of the land. In that order, in the Supremacy Clause. And so again, there are those who flat don't want the United States of America to exist. But you know, as I opened my remarks, I was born here. I lived all over the country. I love my ancestry. I cherish my husband's ancestry. I don't have another country. And it troubles me that we've had such disharmony, because this United States has the richest history, and it really learned by skinning its knees. And yes, there were problems from 1620 forward with Jamestown and the Pilgrims. They've been forming this country has not been gentle. It's been hard. But let me just give you the year 1855 to put a little perspective on this. That's the year when most of the treaties were executed across the country. What was going on in 1855 in our country? Well, they'd had the Louisiana Purchase, which also removed all Aboriginal land in that sale. They were saying, go west, young man, go west. And so young man put stuff in his wagon and went west. You know, young man wasn't given a thin dime from the federal government. It was just saying, go west. If you find some acreage out there and you can homestead and build something on it for 5 years, you can have it. That's how the West was settled. And the reservations were opened up in 1855. Now in 1855, all those treaties were executed, and American Indians were given land, sanctuary, beneficial use and occupancy, protection, money, annual dollars for their chiefs, and housing, and blankets, and commodities, blacksmiths, doctors. In 1855, American Indians were given at least basics. Not young men going west. In 1855, 5 years before the Civil War, we were still buying and selling blacks like cattle. So when I look at this country's growth, yeah, we did some things really stupid and really wrong and really painful for all people, you know. But of all the people on the planet, on this country in 1855, the ones that were receiving federal assistance, and to this day still are, were the American Indians. Nobody else, until the New Deal later on, until we got in Social Security and whatnot. So I think that merits some perspective. Now in 2016, there's this big move that everybody's entitled. Oh, everybody should be ashamed. Oh, you owe us. We want black reparations. We want this. We want that. Well, that's not the way the country was built. But that is the way to take it down. And I will absolutely vehemently oppose anything that distorts the values that are set forth in our Constitution and in our cultural beliefs. And it just breaks my heart that some people who have so deeply benefited from the United States and all the people in the country, we just want everybody to leave. Makes no sense.
I'd like
Yes.
to make a comment and refute some of the,
Pardon?
I'd like to make a comment, refute, or set the record straight, if you will.
Okay.
The tax thing, first of all, was a referendum vote. And with
The what? I'm sorry, could you?
the tax situation for the Oneida people was a referendum vote.
The sales tax piece.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, how you're promoting it, you don't understand our system. And a referendum vote in the non-Indian system is almost like law. You will do it.
Yeah.
In our system, a referendum vote is an opinion vote only.
Uh-huh.
And of that vote, only about 130 Oneidas voted in totality, if I remember correctly, and around 100 said yes. That is only opinion.
Yeah.
It's not what is to be.
Right.
So I think a lot of non-Indians are the media obviously is making it out like this is what we're going to do. There's research that we're talking that it may or may not happen because there's so much research, there's so much to do to make that referendum a reality, and we're talking down the road. So that's the first thing. It's the media who put the twist on it, and the media always knows.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
The media always knows how
Yeah.
to put a twist, especially for the Indian people. It's always a negative twist, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Secondly, when you're talking jurisdiction,
Mm-hmm.
and what's interesting, I guess, it's two conversations. Jurisdiction is a component of inherent sovereignty. And Indian people,
Oh, well, we've been apart company there, but go ahead.
Indian people understand inherent sovereignty. It's comprised of a whole bunch of stuff,
Yeah.
not just jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And the ability to create laws for yourself and so forth and that and all that, that's just one component of what inherent sovereignty really is.
Yeah.
So, Jack Campese and Gordy McLester, they would truly, in all of the materials and all their research, they would definitely have enough legal arguments, constitutional, historical documents and arguments, and they've written the books on our sovereignty and our inherent sovereign that would definitely go against everything that you said tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go Schamberg and so forth. Anyway,
Yeah.
but the point on that is you're only looking at time. And when you were talking, there is a tribe in Canada, and in the Supreme Court of Canada, they worked diligently to get the judge to bring in and have their grandmas and their grandpas talk about some of the historical things that were going on in the community.
Yeah.
The court system fought this tribe for about 25 years, and as they're fighting the tribe, these grandmas and grandpas are dying off. Ultimately, Supreme Court justice in Canada allowed the remainder grandmas and grandpas to come in, give their oral testimony, and it was part of the record, and the Indian tribe, what they were fighting for, won. So you're only looking at a one spoke on the bike. There's so much more to Oneidas
Okay,
and to the Oneida Nation than just 1937, and we can go back
Right.
2,000 years at minimum.
Yep.
Um,
You can go back to time immemorial.
Correct.
Absolutely.
The point I'm trying
Yeah.
to make is you say we're not legally a government, and whether you realize it or not, that is so hurtful to Oneida people.
No doubt. No doubt.
You are hurting.
Yeah.
You are
Yeah.
consciously trying to hurt us by saying that, and it's very hurtful. I will say
Yeah.
that I'm so offended by that statement, not because we don't have the right, it's because we always had the inherent right. And it's not something that we can describe by a piece of paper. It's within us.
That's right.
And that's what you don't want to understand. All you want to understand is say, they're not legal, 1937.
May I
And
read?
that's all I heard.
Okay, I know that's all you heard.
So I think the last thing I wanted to say is on IGRA, a lawyer will argue this or this, however you pay them. So you can go around the country and get as many lawyers as you want, and if you pay them, they'll argue against this or they'll argue for that. The IGRA, I would recommend somehow you go back and you read it, because what you told the people tonight was totally inaccurate, 100%. It wasn't even close on how the state compacting works,
You're welcome.
on how the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act works, and the reality of it is because...
Okay, my turn, because
Well, let
they,
me finish, please. I'm almost done.
I hope so.
Because we are inherently sovereign.
Inherently sovereign. I love that word, inherently.
And yet, IGRA was enacted after Indian gaming. It was a way that the federal government, the state government, was so trying to get their hands on this, and this idea of mobsters, really? Onaitas have never had mobsters. We've made our own mistakes, let me tell you. And every government makes their own mistakes. We didn't need the mobsters.
Okay, now I've been kind and I've given you a long time to, and I'd like, because these folks are probably
Well,
at
it's
time.
a debate, so there's my debate.
Yes, and you know something? Thank you for that, and I respect that, and I really wish we could put a group together of folks that think like me and folks that think like you, and let's sit down and hash some of this out.
That's who hurtful.
Well, let me ask you how hurtful you think it might be when you have 567 tribal governments, all of whose ancestors and aboriginal grounds existed prior to the United States, who want the United States gone. How hurtful is that?
I don't hear that amongst Indian people.
Oh, well, you do. But my turn, and I want to respond to the inherent sovereignty thing. Because that is the big umbrella, inherent sovereignty. Here's what inherent sovereignty is. Within the Brown... Wait, it's my turn. I appreciate your respect.
That was your opinion. This is your opinion.
This is my opinion. But it's not without foundation. You can accept my opinion or not, but this is my opinion, and it's not without foundation. Within the Brown County Taxpayers Association, within the Boy Scouts of America, within any Indian tribe, within several clans and families of Neanderthal man, inherent sovereignty is the right of humans who have common interests and common bonds and common values to inherently organize and govern themselves. And that's what inherent sovereignty is. The new mantra that everybody's chanting, and you guys have it down cold, is that, inherent sovereignty predated the Constitution and it has governing and jurisdictional power, and it does not. Any more than the BCTA, the Catholic Church, the Methodist Church, the PTA, any group of human beings has the right in this country to organize itself and to practice its own inherent sovereignty. That's what it is. Doesn't give you jurisdiction or governing authority. And when the National Congress of American Indians, all the folks say, hey, let's push out this inherent sovereignty because it's ours, we were here first and all that stuff, I strongly disagree. Because if your inherent sovereignty is true, nobody else has it. And that doesn't even pass logic. It just doesn't even pass logic. So, I do think we have great difference of opinions. We have big problems to solve to make this country whole that includes wonderful American Indian tribes. But until you guys are willing to sit down with people like me and we can sit and talk turkey and work with our elected officials, we're going to just be meeting in the courts. That's all we can do because we have the right to defend ourselves as much as you do. So, yes.
How does a group of people become sovereign?
They have an inherent sovereign.
No, I'm asking you. How does a group of people become sovereign?
They can get together and decide that they have common interests.
So where do they go to become sovereign?
It's an inherent, internal human inalienable right.
So you're acknowledging that Oneida's inherent sovereignty is right?
Their inherent sovereignty is right, and their inherent sovereignty has existed since the first Oneida came on the earth.
So everything you just said was irrelevant.
No, it's not. The inherent sovereignty
You're
of...
agreeing with it, that's what you're saying it comes from.
Well, I'm not sure I get you on that. Say it again.
Okay, I'll rephrase that. Where do you go to become a sovereign?
You don't go anywhere to become sovereign.
How do you become a sovereign?
Humans are born that way in the United States.
How did the United States of America become a sovereign?
The humans that came onto the continent, and they did not come on as conquerors, but the human beings that came onto this continent and managed to take 155 years to grow Jamestown to the 13 colonies to 1789 to the United States.
Wasn't the first settlement in the United States?
I realize that. There were some settlements here in Green Bay in the early 1600s. Yes, I certainly do. But anyway,
Elaine, I would recommend that
yes.
the document and the meeting end as it is speaking right now. We've spoken and everybody's had their opportunity.
Yes.
And everybody should just sit back now and reflect and move forward on the words.
She says she liked it.
Well, but this isn't an evening of debate. But I'll give you my card.
You were the one yourself that said you like a good debate, and that's what's happening.
Yes. And I'll be happy to give you my cards. You can reach me by email. And as long as you're not... Yes. Well, no, we need to close this up because...
And I would like to say that
yes.
It is time to close it.
Yeah. And no, sir, I'm sorry, they're trying to close the meeting. I want to thank you very much for allowing me to be here. And who's your BCTA rep to come up and close the meeting?
It doesn't give any money back to the surrounding areas, but we gave $20 million for the stadium. We gave $20 million for the press center.
That is grant money.
That wasn't grant money.
All right, I want to thank everyone for attending for the healthy discussion and debate. Obviously, this is not a simple matter. There's a lot of differing opinions. There's a lot of differing legal representation in that. But as I said at the beginning, one of the missions of the Brown County Taxpayers Association is to have an informed citizenry. And so I appreciate people's comments, people's questions, people's debate in this, because that's how we get a more educated citizenry, and that's how we can come about making good decisions and cooperative decisions. So once again, thank you for attending. I want to thank Elaine for coming here and speaking with us. I want to thank those of you that asked questions, that took part in the discussion as well, because again, we all learn more from having those open discussions. So thank you very much.